even then, the most important thing is we are trying to take lessons from Bhagavatam, uh, so that we can continue to exist in this world, uh, with some level of peace. And because of Krishna consciousness, we hope to become actually happy. The whole purpose, that everyone is running for is actually happiness. Everybody is running for happiness. We try to find it amongst devotees, we try to find it amongst the materialists, but we don't realize that happiness is actually a state of consciousness. And until our consciousness changes, until our outlook changes, it's very difficult. Our Guru Maharaj always pointed out to us, that it doesn't matter where you go. In fact, I think if you read today's calendar, he will say, that even if you migrate to another country, the mind travels with you. So it doesn't matter where we are or who we are with, finally. It is our consciousness that really matters. So today we have a very wonderful pastime and a good opportunity to come together to remember Lord Narasimha on this very auspicious day of Lord Narasimha's appearance. Bhagavatam is not meant just to be read, it is meant to ultimately be put into practice. So today we want to do two things. We want to understand the pastime of the Lord, which is very auspicious and very important, but we want to understand the pastime of the Lord through the lens of Bhagavatam, specifically with a focus on the point of fear and anxiety. The beauty of Narasimha's pastime and the Lord's pastime is every time you read it, you can find something else that is coming out. These are all the transcendental mellows of one pastime. So today, because it is an ocean, and we have 1 hour, so we cannot cross the ocean in 1 hour, but we can take a very important practical point from Bhagavatam, and that is the concept of fear. Fear in the hearts of demons, sometimes fear in the heart of devotees, anxiety, the cousin of fear, why we are anxious, what is it that causes anxiety, and how through this pastime we could understand the fear that Hiranyakashipu had versus the fearlessness of Prahlad Maharaj. So this is a very important and very practical thing, because every living entity in this world lives with fear and anxiety at every junction of our lives. Om Namo Bhagavate Narsinghaya. Namaste Jasate Jase. Avir Avir Bhava. Vajranakra Vajradhamstra Karma Shayan. Randaya Randaya Tamo Grasa Grasa. Om Swaha Abhayam Abhayam Atmani Bhuyishta. Om Shraum Om Shraum Om Shraum. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Lord Narasimha, the source of all power. O my Lord, who possesses nails and teeth just like thunderbolts, kindly vanquish our demon-like desires for fruitive activity in this material world. Please appear in our hearts and drive away our ignorance, so that by your mercy we may become fearless in the struggle for existence in this material world. See, even in this prayer, the word fear is coming in fearlessness. So our prayer in this verse from the 5th canto, 18th chapter, 8th verse is very important, because in this verse, Prahlad Maharaj actually, he's praying, that please, my dear Lord, if we want to become fearless in this world, then in this verse of 5:18:8, the secret to fearlessness is given. We pray to Lord Narasimha that whatever demon-like desires we have, for what? For fruitive activities in this material world. That is the reason why fear comes in our heart. The moment we interact with devotees and we have a fruitive mentality, I expect something from you, you expect something from me, and when that expectation is not fulfilled and the desire for fruitive activity is not fulfilled, then there is fear and anxiety. There is pride and envy, and then there is so much of disturbance. Already we are living in Kali Yuga. During Lord Narasimha's advent, it was not Kali Yuga, millions of years ago. So fear and anxiety were not so much apparent. But now we have a double dose. We already have Kali Yuga, which is full of fear and anxiety. We are living in the material world, which is full of fear and anxiety. So until we understand the secret, what is Prahlad Maharaj's prayer? He could have prayed for anything, but he's praying to vanquish our demon-like desire for fruitive activity. So sometimes when we were materialists or we were not in devotional service, always we were moved by fruitive activity. Everything I do, I want something. Everything I do, I want something. I want some fruit. I want some fruit. I want some fruit. Where there is no fruit, either I become angry or I become envious because someone else has a fruit and I don't have a fruit. And in this way, when I don't get something, I'm fearful. Or if I have something and you want something, then I become fearful that you want to take it from me. This is the meaning of fruitive activity. The moment we have that desire in our heart, whether we are in devotee community, whether we are in non-devotee community, there will always be fear. And that's why Prahlad Maharaj prays in this prayer, please appear in our hearts and drive away our ignorance. Because this ignorance is what is actually giving us fear. This is a very important point that we have to understand. So today we want to look at a very nice verse from Bhagavatam that we would like to look at. So let's take that verse, and from that verse we can understand. I just wanted to share with you the verse first, so it's easier for everyone to see. Traipishtaporubhayaha sa narsingha rupam kritva brahmadbrukutidam strakalara vaktram Daitendriyamashu gadaya bipatantamarad Urau nipatya vidadharanakai spurantam Traipishtaporubhayaha sa narsingha rupam Kritva brahmadbrukutidam strakalara vaktram Daitendriyamashu gadaya bipatantamarad Urau nipatya vidadharanakai spurantam Traipishtaporubhayaha sa narsingha rupam Kritva brahmadbrukutidam strakalara vaktram Daitendriyamashu gadaya bipatantamarad Urau nipatya vidadharanakai spurantam. Traipishtapa, the demigods. Uru Bayaha, one who vanquishes great fears. Saha, he, the personality of Godhead. Narsingha Rupam, assuming the incarnation Narsingha. Kritva, doing so. Brahmat, by rolling. Brukuti, eyebrows. Damstra, teeth. Kalara, greatly fearful. Vaktram, mouth. Daitriya Indriyam, the king of the demons. Ashu, immediately. Gadaya, with club in hand. Abhipatantam, while falling down. Arat, nearby. Urau, on the thighs. Nipatya, placing on. Vidadara, pierced. Nakai, by the nails. Spurantam, while challenging. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. The personality of Godhead assumed the incarnation of Narsingha Deva in order to vanquish the great fears of the demigods. He killed the king of the demons Hiranyakashipu, who challenged the Lord with a club in his hand by placing the demon on his thighs and piercing him with his nails, rolling his eyebrows in anger and showing his fearful teeth and mouth. The history of Hiranyakashipu and his great devotee son Prahlad Maharaj is narrated in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Hiranyakashipu became very powerful by material achievements and thought himself to be immortal by the grace of Brahmaji. Brahmaji declined to award him the benediction of immortality because he himself is not an immortal being. But Hiranyakashipu derived Brahmaji's benediction in a roundabout way, almost equal to becoming an immortal being. Hiranyakashipu was sure that he would not be killed by any man or demigod or by any kind of known weapon, nor would he die in day or night. The Lord, however, assumed the incarnation of half man and half lion, which was beyond the imagination of a materialistic demon like Hiranyakashipu, and thus, keeping pace with the benediction of Brahmaji, the Lord killed him. He killed him on his lap, so that he was killed neither on the land, nor on the water, nor in the sky. The demon was pierced by Narasimha's nails, which were beyond the human weapons imaginable by Hiranyakashipu. The literal meaning of Hiranyakashipu is one who is after gold and soft bidding, the ultimate aim of all materialistic men. Such demonic men who have no relationship with God gradually become puffed up by material acquisitions, and they begin to challenge the authority of the Supreme Lord and torture those who are devotees of the Lord. Prahlad Maharaj happened to be the son of Hiranyakashipu, and because the boy was a great devotee, his father tortured him to the best of his ability. In this extreme situation, the Lord assumed the incarnation of Narasimha, and just to finish the enemy of the demigods, the Lord killed Hiranyakashipu in a manner beyond the demon's imagination. Materialistic plans of godless demons are always frustrated by the all-powerful Lord. Materialistic plans of godless demons are always frustrated by the all-powerful Lord. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So that was the verse that we wanted to have context with. It's a very important verse in Bhagavatam. There are so many deep mellows, like we said, to this wonderful pastime of Bhagavatam. But the main flow and the main focus today is that word, that comes in the translation of 2.7.14. The personality of Godhead assumed the incarnation of Narasimhadev. Why? Bhagavatam tells us, Shukadev Goswami is speaking this verse. He's telling Parikshit Maharaj that Lord Narasimhadev came to vanquish the great fear of the demigods. He didn't come to vanquish the demon, Hiranyakashipu. It's a very important point. He came to vanquish the fear of the demigods. Because in many ways, fear is a demon. Fear can demonize us. Fear is actually the real problem. Hiranyakashipu is in one sense a receptacle or a vessel that holds fear for people. But the real thing that the Lord has come in this pastime is to vanquish the fear. So this is a very important point that is given in this verse. And if we don't read Bhagavatam and study Bhagavatam carefully, we will miss this point. We'll always think that someone represents fear, or someone is causing us fearfulness. That the person may be causing us some fear, but the real challenge is to vanquish the fear in our hearts. This is very important. There'll always be Hiranyakashipus around us. Sometimes we ourselves may become Hiranyakashipu. But the important thing is that we want to vanquish the fear that is in our heart. That is why Narasimhadev comes. Narasimhadev did not come to vanquish a demon. He came to protect the devotees like the demigods who are devotees. He came to protect Prahlad Maharaj, his topmost devotee. That was the focus, and that is always the focus of Krishna. And that is why this verse very correctly focuses that actually Krishna consciousness is focused on our heart. It is not focused on externalities. It is actually focused on all the difficulties that we are feeling in this heart of ours. And that's why he killed the king of the demons, Hiranyakashipu. So this word of Uru, Bayaha, that describes Narasimhadev. Narasimhadev is one who vanquishes the great fears. And this is the greatness of Krishna. If we have faith in Krishna, depending on the level of our faith, to that extent, we can experience how Krishna is vanquishing great fear. When our faith is not very strong, then sometimes, the fear that is in our heart becomes even stronger than the faith that we have actually. So this is a very important point that we should remember. Why is this very important? Because when you look at the concept of devotional service, what is the whole concept of devotional service? Sarva upadi vinirmuktam, isn't it? That's the whole point of it. I think in Madhya Leela, this verse is quoted. In Madhya Leela 19:170, this verse is famously quoted. Sarva upadi vinirmuktam tad paratvena nirmalam. Rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchyate. Bhakti means to engage all our senses. In who? In the service of the Lord. Hiranyakashipu engaged all his senses, but he engaged them in the service of his own senses. When one engages his senses for the service of the Lord, then the Lord is the master of the senses and he will protect our senses. This is a very important point. When the spirit soul renders service to Krishna, two things will happen. One, we become freed from material designations. Why? Because material designations is the root cause of fear. When you think you have a designation and you think someone is threatening your designation, or someone is going to take away your designation, or someone is intimidating you because the other person has a designation, because of all these designations, we become fearful. Because everyone, if we are fruitive in mentality, we do not want to lose our material designation. Hiranyakashipu thought himself to be the lord of the universe. He thought himself to be the greatest of the greatest. That was his material designation. Supposing I think I am the president of a society, then I've fallen into the trap of material designation. So if someone comes to challenge my authority, I become fearful. And in fear, we always react. And that's what Hiranyakashipu did. So if we take up bhakti, it's very important for us to be free of material designation. But bhakti automatically allows us to come out of it. That is the beauty of it. So if we still have not come out of it, it's a good sign that we have not been practicing devotional service nicely. Then whom to blame? We should only look to our own devotional service. And the second side effect of bhakti is that our senses become purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. This is a very important point. So now we must understand this thing, that actually when we talk about Narasimhadev came to eradicate the fear in the hearts of his devotees, particularly the Devatas. In the third canto, 17th chapter, in the first verse of the 17th chapter, very important thing is given. In that chapter, Srila Prabhupada in the purport says that actually every living entity in this material world has the quality of fear embedded in our hearts. Why? Because Prabhupada writes in that purport that the quality of fear exists in every living entity in this material world. Prabhupada says eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. He says that in these four items that we do, we are always fearful. But notice one thing, Prabhu's Matajis. Normally we talk about eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, isn't it? But if you look at the translation of these four things that we are always doing, you'll find that defending is very often given as bhaya, which actually is fear. So frankly speaking, whenever we are fearful, that's why we defend. When we are fearful of losing something, we become defensive, right? Even in the material world, you realize if you put someone on the defensive, it's because that person is fearful that he's being challenged or he's being intimidated. So you see how clearly Prabhupada tells us that actually by defending, we are defending not because we are strong, but actually because we are fearful. In the material world, it appears as if we are strong, but from the spiritual point of view, we are fearful. Then Prabhupada writes very nicely in that purport. The difference is, he says everyone is fearful. So please don't feel bad if you are feeling fearful. We all are feeling fearful at some point. I'm feeling fearful that I'll take too much time. But everyone feels fearful. But Prabhupada writes a very nice point there. He says the difference is the devas, the demigods, they approach authority when they are fearful. Who is the authority? The Lord and his devotees. So when they are fearful, they approach the authority. Whereas, Prabhupada writes in the purport, the inhabitants of the earth, they defy authority. The demons also defy authority. So then Prabhupada goes on to say in the purport, if people of this world could only approach authority, how nice he says, if people of this world can only approach authority, then every adverse condition. Did you hear an echo? Okay, is this better? I hope. Okay, good. So it's stated actually that if people in this world only approached authority, then Prabhupada says every adverse condition in this universe would be rectified. How important this is. Then Prabhupada goes on to say, Arjuna was also disturbed on the battlefield, but he approached the authority Krishna and his problem was solved. How nicely Prabhupada is saying. Krishna was approached by Arjuna because he was fearful and he was also disturbed. But he approached Krishna and his problem was solved. Prabhupada ends the purport by saying, the conclusive instruction of this incident, the incident of fear, is that we may be disturbed by some material condition. But if we approach the authority who can actually explain the matter, then our problem is solved. The Devas approached Brahma in that context and they became pacified. This is a very important point that we should remember. So this is in the third canto, 17th chapter and the first verse. So this shows us that fear will exist. The devotees, if you remember in Krishna book, Devaki Mata feared Kamsa, isn't it? So you may say, oh, that means she was not a devotee? No, but her fear was different. Her fear was the fear that she would actually take the association of Kamsa and forget Krishna. That fear of a devotee actually protects a devotee. So we must be very careful about how we use the word fear. The residents of Vrindavan also sometimes were fearful when calamities came. But as Prabhupada writes in the purport, they approached the authority Krishna. When Indra sent great rains and thunder and hailstorms, the residents never blamed Krishna. They ran to the house of Krishna and they said, Krishna, please help us. In other words, they approached Krishna. So when all of us are in difficulty and disturbed, let us all run towards Lord Narasimha and let us all ask him, please take away these demonic desires, because it is these demonic desires that are causing us fear. Please, that is how we should feel. So this is a very important point. Now, before we start the pastime of the Lord in the context of this point of fear, it's also very important for us to remember, what does Bhagavatam say about how fear arises? One of the most seminal verses on why fear arises is from the 11th canto, 2nd chapter, 37th verse. 11 to 37, very important verse. There it's very nicely stated. Bhayam dvitiya biniveshatasya isha apetasya viparyayo smriti tanmayayato buddha abhajetam bhaktye kayesham gurudevatatma. And the translation is very nice. Fear arises when the living entity misidentifies himself as the material body. Why? Because of being absorbed in the external illusory energy of the Lord. When the living entity turns away from the Supreme Lord, he also forgets his own constitutional position as servant of the Lord. This bewildering, fearful condition is affected by the potency of illusion, which is called Maya. Therefore, an intelligent person should engage unflinchingly in the unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. And that person should do it under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, whom he should accept as his worshipable deity and his very life and his very soul. So in this verse, the cause of fear is given and the solution to fear is given. The cause of fear, Prabhus and Matajis, is we misidentify ourselves with this ultimate material designation. What is the ultimate material designation? I am so and so. I am this body. I am in this position. I am of a certain standing. The moment we think that way, we become fearful because we think that we will be threatened. But Krishna has given us in Bhagavatam the way to come out of it. Please engage unflinchingly in the unalloyed devotional service to Krishna. Why unflinching and why unalloyed? Unalloyed means the metal which is pure. Sometimes people ask, Prabhupada, where did you get the word unalloyed? They were thinking it's coming from the scriptures. But Prabhupada said, I was passing by one of the factory places in the US, and I passed by a metal factory, And there, it was advertising that the metal produced from the factory is unalloyed, which means it's pure. So Prabhupada thought this is the right way to actually describe devotional service. See how practical the acharyas is. Uh, so therefore, the more unalloyed our devotional service is, in other words, less fruitive motives, less material motivation, and more spiritual motivation. That way, fear will leave us. So please remember that this is the reason why we fear. And how to come out of this fear is very nicely given by Brahmaji. If you remember, I just quoted just now the verse about fear, 3:17:1, isn't it? Now, before that, Brahmaji gave very nice advice to the Devatas. Vishwasya stitilayo bhava etu adyo yogeshwarai apiduradhyaya yogamayaha shemam vidashyati sano bhagavan tridaya dishas tatrasmadiya vimrishena kiyan ihartaha. This verse is found in the 3rd canto, 16th chapter, 37th verse. And all the devatas approach Brahma. You know why they approach Brahma? Because Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha had been just born. And this is how we connect today to the pastime of Nrsimhadev. At the point when they came down to this earth because of the curse of the Sanat Kumaras on Jai and Vijay, they came as Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu. When the devatas saw these two powerful demons being born and growing, they became afraid. Why were they afraid? Because one, they're in the material world. Two, they are afraid because they were afraid that the demons would take over Swarga Loka. This is the fruitive mentality of the Devatas. They are devotees, but because they are not pure devotees of the Lord, then what happens? In 3:16:37, the last verse, in 3:16:37, Brahmaji tells them, reminds them that you are not the controller of this universe. But because the Devatas thought Swargaloka belonged to them, they were actually afraid. They were actually afraid that Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha would take over Swargaloka. So I remember my Guru Maharaj pointing out a very important point. He said that actually, frankly speaking, you cannot completely blame Hiranyakashipu for causing fear in the hearts of the Devatas. Why? Because the Devatas were themselves attached to the material idea of being masters of Swargaloka. That is why Prahlad Maharaj did not have fear in his heart, because he was not attached to anything. See the difference. Even on devotional service, there is a spectrum. If we are still performing mixed devotional service, where we expect things from devotees, expect things from the Lord, expect that we should have our own domain, like the Devatas, then when Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha were born, they became very disturbed, very disturbed. So when we become disturbed, my Guru Maharaj said, don't blame it on others. Look at what is the cause of your disturbance in your heart. It is because you are worried that something that belongs to you is going to be threatened, but nothing belongs to you. This is the most important point. So in 3:16:37, Brahmaji gives very nice advice to the Devatas. He says, my dear sons, Krishna is the controller of the modes of nature. He is responsible for everything in this universe. That most ancient person, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only He will come to our rescue. So therefore, tastra madiya vimrishena kiyan ihartaha. What purpose can we serve on His behalf by deliberating on the subject? What purpose can we serve on His behalf by deliberating on the subject? Very often fear grows when we deliberate on a subject. Have you noticed that? The more your mind dwells on something which is causing you anxiety, your anxiety grows and grows and grows. It's the perfect way to increase your blood pressure. Just dwell on that which is the source of anxiety. You can't sleep, you can't eat. It's a great way of losing weight, but it's all for the wrong cause. Why? Because we think that by deliberating on the subject, the fear will go away, isn't it? So therefore, we actually think that the more we deliberate on a problem, the problem will be solved. But actually, the problem cannot be solved by our deliberation, because Brahmaji says, you can, by deliberating on it, what purpose can you serve? Krishna is in control. Better you deliberate on Krishna, because where you are deliberating, there your mind goes. Prahlad Maharaj was deliberating on Krishna even as Hiranyakashipu was harassing him. He was not deliberating on Hiranyakashipu. He was really International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Otherwise, we become International Society for Hiranyakashipu Consciousness. I don't know how you say it. It's not iskcon, but it'll be a funny name. But that's what happens because we are in that situation. So this is a very important thing that we should remember. And that is why the last point on fear I want to share with you is this idea of how to come out of fear. 11.737 is the royal road to come out of fear. Bhutai akramyamano api Dhiro daiva vasa anugahi tad vidvan na chalen margar anvasiksham shite vratam. This is a nice example taken from Bhagavatam about the example of Mother Earth. A sober person, even when harassed by other living beings, they will understand that those who are harassing them are themselves helplessly under the modes of material nature. Therefore, na chalen margar. Devotees are never distracted from the progress of their own path. And you will see as we speak on the pastime that no matter what happened to Prahlad Maharaj, his devotional service continued unabated. And that's what we have to do, Prabhus and Matajis. If we want to make today's appearance day count, then please, instead of identifying your aggressors, instead of blaming the harassers, please understand it from Bhagavatam's context. Your harassers are harassed by their own minds. And you know, the problem in this material world is if I'm harassed, I'll throw the harassment on you. Isn't it true? That's what happens. We don't spread the love around. We actually spread the hate around. That is the problem in the world. But a devotee, a sadhu is very different. The sadhu, because he's controlled and he's always remembering Krishna, he's always inspiring others to remember Krishna. Therefore, if you're in the company of sadhus, you won't become disturbed. You feel inspired. That is the real test of a sadhu. Not in the descriptions, but in whether that person, in that person's presence, do you become inspired? And do you realize that that person has the way to give you the way out of this? That is the spiritual master that we're talking about. So remember what the earth has said and come out of the spirit of fear. Now let's look, after now that we've given the context of fear, why fear comes, and we'll have some more. Now let us look for the next few minutes on this glorious pastime of Lord Narasimhadev. And as you read through and understand this pastime, you will see how many times the word fear comes. And you will see how many times the word fearlessness comes. You'll see how many times the word calm and composed comes, and how many times the word disturbed and agitated comes. Actually, it is such a nice way to study Bhagavatam. The pastime only has three persons basically. We have that terrorist, the ultimate terrorist, Hiranyakashipu, isn't it? That terrorist was so powerful, and he was the younger brother of Hiranyaksha. Bhagavatam tells us that he was the original terrorist of this material universe. Long before the others came, he was there. And he was the sworn enemy of the Supreme Lord because he blamed the Lord for the death of his brother Hiranyaksha. And this is one example of demonic thinking, that when something bad happens, we always blame Krishna. We never see the fact that we are also to be blamed. Or if Krishna is not there, we blame others around us. And we say, Prabhu, because of you, I can't chant. Because of you, I cannot do this. Because of what you said, I'm disturbed. So this is the mood. This was the mood of Hiranyakashipu. And that is the start of demonic tendencies. The other personality who's very important in this pastime is Lord Narasimhadev himself. But the interesting thing is Lord Narasimhadev appears right at the conclusion of this wonderful pastime. Before that, actually it's very interesting. He doesn't appear at the start. He appears almost at the end, makes an amazing entrance, and then goes out with a flare. But basically, it's all about Hiranyakashipu, and it's definitely about Prahlad Maharaj. So Hiranyakashipu started his quest. He started his quest to actually destroy Krishna Okay, somebody has not muted. Okay, thank you. So Hiranyakashipu was very upset because his brother was killed. And if you read Bhagavatam, you see that that made him very, very angry. Hiranyakashipu promised to his family of demons, because his mother and all his relatives, they were very sad when Hiranyaksha died. He said, I shall sever Lord Vishnu's head from his body by my trident, and with the profuse blood from Lord Vishnu's body, I shall please my brother Hiranyaksha. Why? Because my brother Hiranyaksha was very fond of sucking and drinking blood himself. This is really demonic, you know. And then Hiranyakashipu says, after I've done that, I will become peaceful. Can you imagine? So, a demon's idea of peace is to cause extreme disturbance to others, and then we become very peaceful. Have you noticed? This is the thing. So, we must be very careful. Sometimes, in order to make ourselves peaceful, we become a source of great headache to others. That is Hiranyakashipu. To become peaceful, we should never cause disturbance to others. This is a very important point. So Hiranyakashipu then started plundering the world. He wanted to provoke the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He terrorized planet Earth. He destroyed innocent lives. The demons that he sent set fire to the cities. They plundered, they killed, and they tortured. And the world became a terrible place to live. Then Hiranyakashipu turned to his mother Diti, because she was really sad, at the loss of Hiranyaksha. And he told her a great wise point from Bhagavatam, which is stunning actually. He said very nicely that, my dear mother, don't lament for Hiranyaksha. Why? Because in a restaurant or a place for drinking cold water, many travelers come together, and after drinking water, they continue in their respective destination. In the same way, my dear mother, Hiranyakashipu said, living entities come together in a family, and later, as a result of their own actions, they are led apart to their destinations. Can you imagine? This is the demon, and he's talking Bhagavatam philosophy. Of course, when it came to himself, he promptly forgot his philosophy, which is a very important point for us to remember. It's one thing to read Bhagavatam, it's an entirely different thing to practice it. Mundane scholarship like Hiranyakashipu is not necessary. What we need to do is change our behavior. That is very important. He then told his mother, why are you aggrieved for the loss of the body of my brother? Only in ignorance do we make bodily distinctions, thinking, who am I, who are the others, what is mine, and what is for others. This is his advice to Diti. And yet, when it came to him, he promptly forgot his own instructions. So this is a lesson for devotees. It's not a lesson for Hiranyakashipu. Reading Srimad Bhagavatam and not practicing it does not make us, does not make us a devotee. Even if we study Bhagavatam, but if our behavior does not change, then actually we are not doing justice to Krishna. This is a very important point that we should remember. Now Hiranyakashipu decided, let me take up great austerity and let me become immortal. So he went, to the hills of the Mandara. And there Bhagavatam says he began performing severe austerities. He stood with his toes on the ground. He kept his arms upwards and he looked towards the sky. Bhagavatam tells us that he actually meditated for almost 60,000 years. You try doing that for a minute and you'll just collapse. But here, 60,000 years. And even though he had come to a point where there was almost nothing on his body, he could still maintain his life air. The rivers, the oceans became agitated because of the force of his austerities. And finally, Brahma had to come to see him to relieve the sufferings of others. You see, so even in his meditation, Hiranyakashipu was not congenial. He caused trouble to others also. This is really demonic mentality. Whenever you are running after fruitive activity, even any attempts at meditation can actually cause trouble to others. When Dhruva Maharaj was actually performing meditation, even though he had been blessed by Narada Muni, but his fruitive activity was still to become the best of the best. And that is why his meditation at that time, for a while, caused disturbance to the world. It's only when Krishna came and touched him and he became completely purified without fruitive activity that there was no disturbance to the world. It's a subtle but very important point. If you notice, whenever Srila Prabhupada performed great austerities, and Prabhupada's austerity was the greatest, he traveled, he preached, he chanted, but he never was a source of disturbance to anyone. All the acharyas were always a source of great joy to everyone because the activities were never fruitive. So Hiranyakashipu gets Brahmaji on his side. And now when Brahmaji comes, the first thing he asks is, Brahma, I want to become immortal. But in the purport we read, Brahma told him, how I cannot make you immortal because just for your information, I'm also not immortal. Somewhere in a lecture, Prabhupada said, if you want $7 and I have $5 in my pocket, then I can only give you 5. I can't give you 7. So we can only give something that we have. So that's very important because Brahmaji realized that he could not give, only Krishna can give immortality, and Brahmaji could not. So now Hiranyakashipu realized, I can't get immortality from Brahma. Actually, this is very sad, I remember my Guru Maharaj saying that if only Hiranyakashipu spent all that 60,000 years meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he would have become liberated. Instead, he had to be killed by Krishna to become liberated. Isn't it just better to have just done the liberative activity beforehand to save all that trouble? But because he turned to the other person, Brahma, who could not give him immortality, why? Because he was envious of Krishna. Envious of Krishna. Sometimes when we see someone doing very nicely in devotional service, we may take pains to avoid that person if we are envious. In fact, sometimes we may think, let me go to others, but I won't go to him. And we find the faults to justify why we don't want to go to that person because of envy. That's what happened with Hiranyakashipu. So now Hiranyakashipu decided, if I cannot be immortal, what did he feel in his heart? Bhagavatam said the moment he realized he could not be immortal, he felt fear in his heart. That's the starting point of his fear, because he realized only Krishna is immortal. But he still refused to bend to Krishna. So he took out what we call in modern terms an insurance policy. What was his insurance policy? His insurance policy was all these terms and conditions. 1, Brahma, let me not meet my death from any living entity created by you. He thought that should cover about everyone else. But he forgot Krishna is not covered by this insurance policy, isn't it? Second, he said, grant me that I will not die within any residence or outside any residence, during daytime or at night, on the ground or in the sky. Grant me that my death will not be brought by any being created by you. Second time he said that. Let it be sure that I cannot be killed by any weapon, nor by any human being or animal. Grant me that I shall not meet death from any entity, living or non-living, demigod or demon, or by any great snakes from the lower planets. Grant me that I shall have no rivals. Give me sole lordship over all living entities and presiding deities, and give me all the glories obtained from that position. Give me all the mystic powers obtained by my long austerity, and make sure that these powers will never be lost at any point of time. That's a very comprehensive policy, by the way. Okay, he basically covered all the 4 grounds that you can cover. He just forgot one point, that there is only one Supreme Personality of Godhead who's completely above all these terms and conditions. But because we don't want to approach authority, remember Prabhupada's purport? Therefore, we are fearful. He approached the wrong authority. So we have to approach the right authority. Then we don't need terms and conditions in insurance policy. Our insurance policy will be unlimited, and it will be a life endowment. And even after life, our insurance policy continues if we are with Krishna. But if we are not with Krishna, then it definitely ends with death. Now, having this insurance policy in his hands, Hiranyakashipu decided, let me terrorize the universe. He enslaved the Devatas. He plundered, he killed mercilessly. He seized their power and influence. At the height of his power, Bhagavatam tells us if Hiranyakashipu lifted his eyebrow, the Devatas would faint. If he lifted the other eyebrow, the Devatas' wives would suffer miscarriages. Can you imagine? That was the height of his power. But the only thing that Hiranyakashipu could not control was actually his own mind and his senses, because he was very attached to his name. His name is Hiranyakashipu. Hiranya means gold and Kashipu means bed. And that's why in the purport to today's verse, Srila Prabhupada makes it a point to point out to us that Hiranyakashipu was defined by always being surrounded by objects of sense enjoyment. He thought that was the goal of life. He enjoyed his senses in the heavens. But while he was enjoying his senses on soft bed and gold, and that's why he's Hiranyakashipu, he forgot that the Devatas, unable to find any shelter, they went to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because they were fearful and they were disturbed. So fear exists everywhere in this material universe. But the Devatas utilized their fear to increase their bhakti. Hiranyakashipu utilized his fear to cause harm and disturbance to other living entities. This is the difference between a devotee and a demon. And this is the difference between devotional behavior in our hearts and the possibility that if we are not devotional in nature, the demonic tendency in our heart to cause disturbance to others. So the Devatas turned to Krishna, and Krishna told them, do not fear. I wish you all good fortune. Be patient. This is another component to cross over fear. When we are patient because we have firm faith in Krishna, that patience becomes a nice platform for us to continue our devotional service. And that's why Krishna told the Devatas, be patient. My Guru Maharaj told us that if you are not patient in devotional service, you'll end up being a patient in the hospital. So this is a very important point to think about actually. And that's why the Devatas were told, please wait patiently, because I know all about the activities of Hiranyakashipu. Krishna said, I know all about him. And now Krishna says something very interesting. When Hiranyakashipu teases the great devotee Prahlad, his own son, who is very peaceful and very sober, and who has no enemy, I will kill Hiranyakashipu immediately, despite the benedictions of Brahma. Why is this verse very important? This verse is found in the 7th canto, 4th chapter, 28th verse. In this verse, there are 3 words describing Prahlad Maharaj, which tells us why Prahlad Maharaj did not have fear in his heart. Prahlad Maharaj was peaceful. Prahlad Maharaj was sober. And Prahlad Maharaj had no enemies. When we don't consider anyone an enemy, because that person is also harassed by the material modes of nature, we don't have fear in our hearts and we are not disturbed. When we are peaceful in our devotional service and we are sober to understand why the things are the way they are, then we will be able to be sheltered from fear by Krishna. Because just like Prahlad's qualities attracted Krishna, our qualities in devotional service will also attract Krishna. This is a very important point. So now Hiranyakashipu's story has started. Let's look at Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj was one of 4 wonderful and qualified sons, and Prahlad Maharaj was considered the best. Bhagavatam tells us that Prahlad Maharaj was Mahasan Tesham Gunai. He was the reservoir of what we call transcendental qualities. He had such nice qualities actually. Bhagavatam tells us that actually one of his great qualities was that he was always fully in control of his senses. He not only was fully in control of his senses, but he was kind to every living entity. And he was the best friend of everyone. Very important. In Bhagavatam, it is stated as Bhratravat Sadrishe Snigdho. That is the meaning of it. That means Prahlad Maharaj was very kind. He was the best friend. To respectable persons, he was like a menial servant. To the poor, he was like a father. To his equals, he was like a sympathetic brother. And he considered his teachers, his spiritual masters, and older god brothers to be as good as Krishna. See, this is the way of a devotee. This is the mood of a devotee. So Prahlad Maharaj, was very, very sober and very, very peaceful. Now, Hiranyakashipu had performed great austerities, and Prahlad was still in the womb of his wife Kayadu. While he was performing austerities, the Devatas had come to ransack his palace, and they were hoping to kill the unborn child of Hiranyakashipu. Because they thought that if we kill the unborn child of Hiranyakashipu, what will happen? What will happen is that the terrible dynasty of Hiranyakashipu would have to end. Indra said that the best way to kill a snake is to cut its head. And therefore, let's end the dynasty by killing the mother and killing the unborn child. But at the point when the mother was going to be taken away, Narada Muni came. And Narada said, inside this mother's womb is a great devotee of the Lord. Let me be responsible for the mother and the child. And Indra obeyed. And so Prahlad Maharaj heard Bhagavatam from Narada Muni. The power of association of a great devotee is a very important way to come out of fear. Because Prahlad Maharaj, from the time he was in the womb, he was already hearing about Krishna from Narada Muni. When he came out of the womb, he was fearless. Parikshit Maharaj also had the same experience. When he was an unborn child in the womb of his mother, Uttara was a devotee of the Lord. She was always chanting Krishna's names. And when the Brahmastra came to attack the unborn child, Uttara prayed heartfelt prayers. Pahi Pahi Mahayogin Deva Deva Jagatpate. See, this is the prayer exalting the great strength of Krishna that will make us fearless. And because Uttara was a devotee, because she was fearless, Parikshit Maharaj in the womb also became fearless. This is Sadhu Sangha. As parents, we all have children. How fearless we are in devotional service will impact our children. How fruitive we are in our devotional service, our children will also see us. How demonic are our desires in devotional service, we will also be seen by our children. We cannot hide from our children because they are very sharp and they see it. So this is why Narada Muni became the best example to Prahlad, and Uttara became best example to Parikshit Maharaj. And this is the power of association of a great devotee. Narada Muni blessed the unborn Prahlad Maharaj that he will never forget the transcendental instructions of Bhagavatam. And that is why Prahlad Maharaj was born to be such a great devotee. So one day, Hiranyakashipu had great hopes for Prahlad, and he was hoping he would succeed him to be the greatest demon, just like he has been a demon. A father thief wants his son to be a better thief than him. A demon father generally would want his son to be a greater demon than than himself. And hopefully a father or mother devotee, our prayer is that our children will become better devotees than us. Srila Prabhupada, in all his humility, writes in one of his purport that he would become transcendently proud if he had disciples who were more advanced than him. Can you imagine that? He had a prayer in Dhruva Maharaj shlokas where he says that if one devotee, if one disciple of mine can become like Dhruva Maharaj and go back to Godhead, then I have a chance that he will take me back to Godhead. Incredible humility of Srila Prabhupada. But it shows you the power of association in countering fear. Now, one day Prahlad Maharaj, was called by Hiranyakashipu. All that time, Prahlad Maharaj had been getting nice education from Sukracharya's sons, Shanda and Amarka. And so the father wanted to hear, please tell me, my dear son, what have you learned? And Hiranyakashipu put Prahlad on his lap, and he actually affectionately inquired from him, my dear son, please let me know what you think is the best for all subjects that you have studied from your teacher. Prabhupada writes in the purport that Hiranyakashipu did not expect substance from the son, but he thought that the son would speak something pleasing, you see. But Prahlad Maharaj immediately told him something very amazing. He said, Tat sadhu manye suravarya dehinam sada samudvikna diyamasad grahad hibvatmana patam graham mandakupam vanam gato yat dharma ashrayetaha. And the meaning is very nice. He says, oh my dear father, king of the demons, as far as I have learned from my spiritual master, Any person who has accepted a temporary body and household life is certainly embarrassed by anxiety. Why? Because he has fallen into the dark well where there is no water except suffering. So one should give up his position and go to Vrindavan and take shelter of Krishna. What Prahlad Maharaj was indirectly telling his father is, Father, it's time for you to retire and concentrate on Krishna. So Hiranyakashipu got really upset. When he heard his son speaking like this, that affection that he had for his son was now replaced by envy. And this is the element of fear. When we are fearful that our position is going to be challenged, when we are fearful because we think someone is trying to be smarter than us and we're envious of that person, it doesn't matter to us, Bhagavatam says, whether they are our near or dear. Even near and dear, we can become envious of them. Even a father like Hiranyakashipu could become envious of a boy like Prahlad. And in his mind, Hiranyakashipu thought, now my boy has become faithful to the camp of my sworn enemy. And immediately in his mind, Prahlad Maharaj had become an enemy. So Hiranyakashipu became very disturbed. He told Shanda and Amarka to take Prahlad Maharaj away and brainwashed him and hopefully come back so that he can become a follower of Hiranyakashipu. Shanda and Amarka tried very hard to influence Prahlad Maharaj. But they asked Prahlad Maharaj, how have you learned about this? Where have you learned about such things? And Prahlad Maharaj said, my dear Brahmanas, as iron is attracted by magnetic stone and it moves automatically towards magnet, my consciousness, having been changed by the will of Krishna, cannot but be attracted towards the form of Lord Vishnu. I have no independence. Such a nice point he gives. The verse is 7, 5, 14. Very important shloka. Prahlad Maharaj ends by telling Shanda and Amarka, I have no independence. This is another important component of fear. Those who are materialistic, we fear because we falsely think we are independent. And therefore, like Hiranyakashipu, whenever our independence is threatened, we become fearful. Prahlad Maharaj is the opposite. A devotee declares that he has no independence. In the material world, when you say that you're dependent on someone, it induces fear. But in the spiritual world, when the devotee says, I am dependent completely on the Lord and his devotees, it induces freedom from fear. See the difference? So if we really want to be free from fear, we must become completely dependent on Krishna. Independence, right, from Krishna is the sure solution. No, it's the sure way to attract fear in this material world. So Shanda and Amarka gave up because they tried very hard to teach the boy politics. He refused. And so after a while, they thought that he would change. But Prahlad Maharaj, just to satisfy them, he heard all the different politics. He heard all the different lessons of materialistic nature. And then when Shanda and Amarka thought, yes, the boy has learned, they brought him back to Hiranyakashipu, round 2. Hiranyakashipu put him on his lap, affectionately spoke to him, and asked him, what have you now learned from your teachers? And Prahlad Maharaj now told him that actually what I've learned is very simple. And he says that famous Shravanam, Kirtan, Vishnu, Smaranam verse. He actually instructs his father that there are 9 items of devotional service that we must follow. Hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering respectful worship, offering prayers, becoming his servant, considering Krishna as one's best friend, surrendering everything to him. He says, Father, these are the 9 processes of pure devotional service. And now he says the thing that really upsets Hiranyakashipu. One who has dedicated his life to the service of Krishna through these 9 methods, that person is understood to be the most learned person, for he has acquired complete knowledge. Now, this pinched Hiranyakashipu because he thought, so now you're telling me I'm not learned. And you're telling me, the greatest progenitor of this universe and ruler of this universe, that I don't know and I'm not learned. So Hiranyakashipu was very disturbed. And when someone always believes that he is the best, then he becomes intimidated very easily. And Hiranyakashipu was really intimidated by a small boy, Prahlad. and he couldn't take it. So he was shocked, by Prahlad's education, and he was shocked by Prahlad's devotional service. And Hiranyakashipu then said that, "You rascal, you are the most fallen in our family." Actually, he was the most elevated. But Hiranyakashipu said, "You are the most fallen. If you have not received education from your teachers, where have you gotten it?" What did Prahlad Maharaj reply? Prahlad Maharaj was very calm. He was very composed in the face of the terrible anger of the demon. Why? Because when one is dependent on Krishna, one becomes fearless. And now he says very nicely, "My dear father, because of uncontrolled senses, persons who are too addicted to the materialistic life, they only progress towards hellish conditions. And what happens is they just chew that which is repeatedly chewed. Their inclination to Krishna, my dear father, are never aroused." Can you imagine that? Prahlad Maharaj really was fearless. If I was in front of Hiranyakashipu, I would just have tried to be diplomatic and got out of the situation. But Prahlad Maharaj was calm, he was composed, he was mild, he was gentle, but he never compromised. This is a mood of a devotee. He did not hurt his father, but he did not compromise either. He was very respectful to his father. He spoke all this with folded hands. This is a very important point. In the purport of 7.5.12 of Srimad Bhagavatam, before we wind down the pastime, is a very important point. In the purport, Prabhupada says very nicely that demons think of everyone as either friend or enemy. But Vaishnavas say that everyone is a servant of the Lord. Therefore, everyone is on the same platform. Therefore, Vaishnavas treat other living entities neither as friends or neither as enemies. They just try to serve everyone according to Krishna consciousness. This is a very important point. And Prabhupada writes in the last part of that paragraph, everyone should be friendly for the service of the Lord. And everyone should praise another's service to the Lord and not be proud of his service. This is Vaishnava way of thinking, and this is Vaikuntha way of thinking. So there is a vast difference between how Prahlad Maharaj saw the world and how Hiranyakashipu saw the world. In Hiranyakashipu's world, it was either you are with me or you are against me. In Prahlad Maharaj's world, everyone is a servant of the Lord. So as long as we are serving Krishna, there's no such thing as friend or enemy. We may not have to associate with a tiger, but we don't hate the tiger. This is a very important point actually that Prahlad Maharaj gave. And finally now, Hiranyakashipu decided, if that is the case, I am now going to kill my son. He came to that extreme measure. And so Hiranyakashipu tried to throw Prahlad Maharaj beneath the feet of elephants. He tried to throw Prahlad Maharaj amidst huge fearful snakes. He tried to employ destructive spells against Prahlad Maharaj. He tried to starve him. He exposed him to severe cold, wind, fire, even water. He threw heavy stones at Prahlad Maharaj. He even administered poison to his own son. But Prahlad Maharaj, in each and every instant, was fully protected by Krishna. And Bhagavatam tells us Prahlad Maharaj remained calm and unagitated. Why? Because his mind and sense was dwelling on the lotus feet of Krishna. Now we come to the last point. When Hiranyakashipu realized that nothing could kill Prahlad, he began to reflect deeply. In the verse known as 7.5.45 of Srimad Bhagavatam, he began thinking, I have used so many ill names to chastise this boy Prahlad. I have tried every way to kill him, but despite all my endeavor, he could not be killed. Indeed, he has been saved by his own powers, and he's not affected the least by my treacherous and even abominable actions. Now Hiranyakashipu said, he is very near to me and he's my child, but he's completely fearless. See, Hiranyakashipu was very disturbed because someone else was fearless. If we are a devotee and we see someone else fearless, we should be inspired, Prabhus and Matajis. But if we see someone who is fearless and we become intimidated, then we are actually in the parampara of Hiranyakashipu, because we are envious of that music. So then what happened was Hiranyakashipu said that this boy is like a dog's curved tail. No matter how much I do, it can never be straightened. And this boy has such a strong connection with his master. It's amazing. And then he says, I can see now that this boy's strength is unlimited. Why? He has not feared any of my punishments. He appears immortal. Because of my enmity towards him, Hiranyakashipu now says, I think I'm going to die. Amazing, huh? He actually says that in 7:5:47. For a brief moment, Hiranyakashipu senses that he has been wrong. Demons also go through periods of good times, but very quickly they forget, you see. So he admitted, I'm going to die because I'm not with Prahlad. But then he changed his mind. And he said, Prahlad, today is going to be your last day. And today I am going to kill you. And because I'm going to kill you now, despite me trying very hard, I sent you to Shanda and Amarka twice, and you came back still fixed on our enemy Vishnu. Then I heard in the second time when you were with Shanda and Amarka, what were you doing? You were actually preaching to the classmates. After they left, you spoke to them about Krishna consciousness and you changed all of them. From becoming followers of Hiranyakashipu, they all became followers of my enemy Vishnu. This is unacceptable. Unacceptable. So Hiranyakashipu became extremely angry. His body trembled. He began hissing like a snake trampled underfoot. But what was Prahlad Maharaj's reaction? Prahlad Maharaj's reaction was he was very peaceful, he was very mild, and he was very gentle. And so Hiranyakashipu said, you are the lowest of mankind, and today I shall send you to the place of Yamaraj. It's good to know that at least he believes there's such a person called Yamaraj. Anyway, that's what he did. And now he said, oh rascal, by whose power have you become so impudent and fearless? And how dare you overstep my power to rule you? And Prahlad Maharaj said, my dear father, the source of my great strength is the source of your strength too. See, even at the last moment, Prahlad Maharaj was building bridges with his father, isn't it? At the very last moment before his father is going to perform a heinous thing, he says, Father, there's no difference. Your strength and my strength are coming from Krishna. So why are we fighting? My dear father, please give up this discrimination in your heart between enemy and friends. Make your mind equipoised. Because there is no other enemy in this world, my dear father, except an uncontrolled and an unagitated and a misguided mind. There is no other enemy in this world than an uncontrolled and misguided mind. And he ends by saying, when you come to the platform of equality, then you come to the position of worshipping the Lord perfectly. Hiranyakashipu replied, rascal, you are trying to minimize my value as if you are better than me at controlling my senses. This is over-intelligent talk. I can see now by your talk that you are very much desiring to die at my hands. For this kind of nonsensical talk is indulged by those who are about to die. He didn't realize that he was about to die. And now he says, my dear unfortunate Prahlad, you have described a supreme being other than me. And you say the supreme being is the source of everything, is in everything, controls everything. But where is he? I don't see him. Is he in the pillar? Is he in this pillar? Is he before me in that pillar? And he started pointing at the pillars. And then, obsessed with anger, Hiranyakashipu took up his sword. He got up from his royal throne. And Bhagavatam says, with great anger, he struck his fist against the column. The moment he struck his fist, from within the pillar came a fearsome sound. It appeared to crack the very covering of the universe, and it instilled great fear in the heart of Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu then saw from that pillar emerge an amazing, amazing form of the Lord. He thought he had never seen this form before. It was neither human nor animal, neither fully man nor fully lion. And in amazement, Hiranyakashipu thought, what is this creature? Then he thought very quickly, this creature is Lord Vishnu. He's trying to come and kill me, but who can fight me? And at that point of time, he thought that he was still invincible. So he thought, being falsely puffed up, he thought that that the Lord would become afraid of his prowess. And so he struck the Lord with his first blow of the sword. But he realized that all his weapons were nothing. And when he was about to be caught by the Lord, as if a wasp can be caught, very easily, he escaped. He took a little bit of rest from his fight. Then he took up his sword and his shield, and he again attacked the Lord with great force. But the Lord made a shrill sound of laughter, like it was nothing. And being extremely strong and powerful, he just captured Hiranyakashipu. At that point of time, the great demon tried to escape with the speed of a hawk, Bhagavatam says. Sometimes he tried to move in the sky. Sometimes he slipped and moved around the earth. But now he found he could not escape. Hiranyakashipu closed his eyes because of the fear when he heard Lord Narasimha's laughter. When Lord Narasimhadev caught the demon in a vice-like grip, Hiranyakashipu tried to move his limbs here and there. He was very much afflicted when he was captured, but he could do nothing. All the years of his strength, which he thought was powerful, you remember his insurance policy that he thought he was impenetrable, it all was coming to an end. The Lord, as Lord Narasimhadev, placed him on his lap, supported him with his thighs, and in the doorway of the assembly hall, during the hour of twilight, which is neither day nor night, at the doorway, which is neither in nor out, and putting him on his lap, which is neither on the floor nor on the earth, the Lord took his nails, which are neither weapons of any kind, because they are very unique, they are nails, and he just dug his hands into the body of Hiranyakashipu, and he very easily tore the demon to pieces with the nails on his hands. The Supreme Lord slayed Hiranyakashipu, so powerful. And when he did that, he broke all the terms of the insurance policy. In other words, whatever insurance policy was there, Krishna did not smash them. He just went around them. Think about it. Hiranyakashipu was killed on his lap, neither land nor sky. He killed the demon in the twilight hour, neither day nor night. The Lord was neither man nor beast. He was not created by Brahma. Brahma was created by him. The Lord killed him with transcendental nails, which are not weapons, but which are neither dead nor alive. Who else but Krishna can actually do this? And after slaying the terrible demon, Bhagavatam tells us that the Lord's fearsome form was impossible to look at. He was so powerful that he decorated on himself a garland of the intestines of Hiranyakashipu's abdomen. The intestines of Hiranyakashipu's abdomen was not placed on the ground. The Lord put it around his neck as a sign of his supremacy. And also a very important point that Shastras tell us. Even though Hiranyakashipu was demon number 1, if you remember in the beginning part, he had a lot of transcendental knowledge but never practically applied. Because that transcendental knowledge was still within his body, the Lord took the intestines, and put them on him to purify Hiranyakashipu, because Krishna says, Bhagavatam says, that the moment Hiranyakashipu touched the lap of the Lord, and the moment the Lord's hands went in him, actually he was liberated. So even in the position where one is envious of someone else, Krishna does not reciprocate envy with envy. Krishna reciprocated love with envy. And this was his love for all living entities, including Hiranyakashipu. And when he decimated the population of the demons, Brahma, Shiva, Lakshmiji, they all chanted beautiful prayers. They chanted very beautiful prayers to the Lord. But at the end of the day, despite all the prayers, the Lord remained transcendently angry. And so Brahmaji turned to Prahlad Maharaj and said, Prahlad, I think all of us are a little bit scared of going to Krishna. He's very nice. He's the object of our love, but his anger is too much. But my dear boy, I think you are the reason why he has come. You appear very peaceful, mild and gentle. You appear fearless. So you please go now. So this is amazing. All the adults were so fearful. Fear exists even in the great devatas, isn't it? But fear does not exist in the heart of a pure devotee. And so Prahlad Maharaj approached Narsinga Dev. And when Narsinga Dev saw Prahlad Maharaj was fearless, he became very peaceful. He put his hand, on the head of Prahlad Maharaj, the hands that wiped out his father. He put that same hand on his head very gently. And Prahlad Maharaj took a nice garland, no more intestinal garlands. He took a nice flower garland and he put it on Lord Narsinga Dev. And when he put it on Lord Narsinga Dev, he gave beautiful prayers. And after that prayers, Narsinga Dev asked him, I love your prayers, but I'm going to ask you to ask me for a boon. And what did Prahlad Maharaj say? In the ultimate symptom of fearlessness, he said, my dear, dear Lord Narsinga Dev, kindly liberate my father. Because he has been envious, he has not been peaceful, kindly excuse him for his offenses, excuse him for his sins. This is the mood of a devotee. No matter how much disturbance the demonic desires and other living entities cause us, we should not mean ill for them. We should always be their well-wishers. When we are well-wishers of everyone, if we see the hand of Krishna in everything, then whatever fear that we have in our heart, Krishna himself as Govinda, as one who gives pleasure to our senses, Krishna himself as Rishikesha, one who protects our senses, he will remove the fear in our hearts. And that is why in this particular verse today that we spoke about, we wanted to concentrate on this point, that Krishna came to vanquish the fear of the devatas. And that is what we are trying to meditate on today. So to conclude, Prabhus and Matajis, we must understand that fear comes because we think ourselves separate from others. And we think that whatever we have doesn't belong to anyone else. But we should soberly think that nothing belongs to us in the first place. Instead of thinking of items as belonging to us, let us think of everything as belonging to Krishna, and let us serve these items that come to us. Serve our family, serve the devotees, and serve in such a way that we don't expect a reward for our designations. Then we are not fearful. My Guru Maharaj told me one time, we were trying to get a land for our temple, and we tried and tried and tried, and we couldn't get it. And so we became fearful that someone else will get the land. We became disturbed why we didn't get the land. And then after that, I approached with my god brother, our Guru Maharaj. And he told us, why are you all disturbed? And why are you all so afraid? Krishna will give us another land if he doesn't want to give us this. Do you not have faith in Krishna? And then he said something that struck me. He said, Devki, as it is, that land did not belong to us in the first place. We just had a prospect of getting it, and already we became so disturbed. So in this world, whatever that you think belongs to you, you must remember that as it is, that thing never belonged to you in the first place. It was just given to you for a while. If you become too attached to it, you will become fearful. If you become too much proprietary over it, you will become fearful. But if you realize, as it is, I came with nothing, and as it is, I will go with nothing. And if you perform the unflinching devotional service, knowing that Krishna is the source of all protection, and that Krishna is actually so powerful that fear personified is fearful of Krishna, then why do we have to fear? This is very important. And please remember one last point from Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada said that it is understandable that we are fearful in this world. What should we do? Just go to the authorities when we are fearful. Go to Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. Go to Krishna in Bhagavatam. Spend time with devotees who can take you out of fear. And spend time with devotees, not fighting with them, not thinking that what they have, what you have is separate. But always remember that ultimately we are all on the same ship. We are all going to the same goal. Some of you may be in the bathroom, some may be on the deck, some may be, steering the ship, but you're ultimately all on the same ship. Trying to fight with each other and getting each other out of the ship is not the way to go forward. And that's why Lord Nrsingadev's pastime is so important. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Srila Gurudev ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.